Okay. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thanks for joining today's Muslim Wellness Foundation webinar in the footsteps of Omar ibn Said. And joining me today is Dr. Mamarame Seck. Dr. Seck earned his PhD in linguistics with a concentration in discourse analysis from the University of Florida. Among his research interests are the role of language and culture, Senegalese society and culture, Islamic discourses in West Africa, and the functions of Sufi oral discourse in the practice of Islam in Senegal. He is also the author of an intermediate Wolof textbook, and Dr. Seck is an associate professor at IFAN at the Cheikh Anta Diop University in Dakar. I would also say that he is one of the preeminent scholars of Said in the world. Not many people have devoted this amount of time and energy to helping us explore Omar's life and legacy. And this is prior to enslavement. So what really excites me about Dr. Seck's research and our ability to collaborate on both sides of the Atlantic is that it allows us to complicate the narrative just a bit and also to start Omar's life in the place that he was born, rather at the moment of his capture. And so for so many descendants of enslaved Africans and certainly African descendant people around the world, having the transatlantic slave trade be the most significant moment that is studied and documented about our lives really shortens, right, who we are to the extent of sort of European colonization and traffic in human beings. But we are much more. We have always been. And so the study of Omar's life in many ways allows all of us the ability to think about who we are beyond those very prescribed narratives that just dictate that the start of our historical timeline begins with the slave trade. And what we know is that there are centuries upon centuries of life and civilization prior to that moment. So welcome, Dr. Seck. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you to share a little bit more. I really shortened your bio into maybe like 4 or 5 sentences. But if there's anything else that you would like to share about your life and work, please do so, and then I'll queue up your presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Camila Mohmin Osegera, for this complete and generous introduction. So it is my pleasure to be here with you today to share my research on Omar ibn Said, as you said it. And also to thank you, to thank Muslim Wellness Foundation for all you've done for me to be able to accomplish this difficult research. Difficult because we are looking for the origins of a man who said who he was, but 1831 is a very long time. So, and we have a few pieces of information to rely on to find his origin in Fouta. But everything was made easy for me by the foundation, just by helping me to be in the field, but also to stay there for a few days, a few times. So I'm very grateful to you for all that support. So I wanted to say that. So as you said, I'm a linguist, and my focus and my training was on discourse analysis. And discourse analysis, I would say, can lead to everything, because you are, trying to understand people and, things through their text or oral production. And that is the reason why when I was introduced to this subject by a colleague and friend, I said, okay, let me look at the text first, or let me try to have it at least read and interpreted by someone here in Senegal, especially in Fouta, because I know that, whoever, speaks reveals themselves to others. So that was my intuition when I started to get into this job, this work. So let me just say that in 2019, during a conference held at the Library of Congress, Senegalese historian Sylviane Diouf advocated the continuation of academic research on Omar ibn Said in Senegal with the local people, but also looking at the local history. Following this recommendation and getting more and more interested in the narrative on Umar in the United States, I decided to carry out investigation to find the true story about him, his life before enslavement, and also try to trace his origins in Fouta. So, and I believe that by looking into that, we would facilitate the reading of his autobiography, but also we would have a better understanding of who Umar was and, where he comes from and everything related to his life. So I conducted interviews with inhabitants of 9 villages in Futa Toro. And the choice of those villages was dictated by the reading of Omar's text, because he gave some geographical, information of the place he was captured and shipped off from. So, and I was with the strip with Jennifer Harps, who is a journalist working at the Post and Courier in Charleston, South Carolina. A friend of mine who is from Fouta and who is knowledgeable of Pular and Arabic as well. And a student of history who was at that time doing an internship here in Ifa. So we went on that trip to kind of find Omar's origin in Fouta. The research hypothesis was that the reading of Omar's text by the Futanke means people of Fouta, will certainly reveal things to us that another reader, even gifted in reading and interpreting text in classical Arabic, could not do better. The reason for such certainty is to be found in the simple fact that Umar wrote in Ajami, and Ajami means like a foreign version of a language. Here, speaking of Ajami Arabic. And we thought that maybe if we have this text read by the local population, we would have a deep understanding of it, because they are from the culture. The purpose of the study was twofold. First, it explores the origin of Omar ibn Said in Fouta, drawing not only from his autobiography, letters, and other writings held in American libraries and museums, but also the oral tradition from his community in Fouta. Second, it poses the question of the symbolic restitution of these documents, and of Omar's memory to the population of Fouta. The methodology I used was to conduct interviews, ask people a series of questions, on the history of the region, on their reading and understanding of the autobiography, but also on other pieces of writings that we have that was composed of letters, handwritten by Omar ibn Said, and especially his 1819 letter in which he said, I would like to return to a place in Africa called, so with a kaf and a ba that can be interpreted differently, according to how we read it and understand it. There was also the question of the appropriation or not of Omar's legacy by the population of Fouta, with a view to a possible restitution of his entire work to Senegal. So we spent 10 days in Fouta, from February 14, 2021 to February 23 to 2021. We went to Saint Louis. We started with Saint Louis because Saint Louis is the former capital of Senegal and also an important port during the slave trade. There is also some archives there that could help us, at least have a map of Fouta at that time and try to locate the different places in the on the Isle of Morpheel. Then we went.
Pardon me, but let me know when you'd like me to start your presentation, or if you want to just provide this background first.
Oh, I'm going through the PowerPoint now, the presentation. Oh, okay. You didn't put it up, but
no, okay. I can pull it up right now.
Yes, I think people have been following.
Okay.
But this is still the background. I'm not
okay
at new findings yet.
Okay, excellent. So just let me know when you would like for me to advance your slides.
Okay, so maybe you should go to slide 9. So yes, so the team was made up of, as I said earlier, Jennifer Hobbs, working at the Boston Courier in Charleston, South Carolina, a photographer, Gavin McIntyre, a Sorbonne history student, Abandin Situboko, and a translator, Abdullahi Gay, who teaches Arabic at the Arabic Institute in Dakar. Next. So the 9 villages, no, go back. The 9 villages were Dimat, Walo, and Dimat Jeri. When you hear Walo, it means across the river, and then Dimat Jeri is on the way. So on the main way. So Coppe Mangay and Alwar. Alwar is the village where Omar Tal, Sheikh Omar Tal was born. Some people tend to compare the two figures, even though they were not contemporary. Okay. Dimat Jeri, where we talked with a main historian, local historian of Fouta. Horefonde was one of the places where Sheikh Omar Tal lived. It's also a very important place in Fouta. Gababe, we went there just because we thought this was maybe a possible reading of the word. The name of the place where Omar was from. Barobe Jakel, there's a story about Barobe being also a possible birthplace of Omar. So we went where the research led us to go, but also we looked at the word and think maybe these are possible places. We went to Gia, which was also indicated by the people in Horefonde. So we spent time in Fouta. But among the 9 villages among the 9 villages that we have visited, Coppe is the closest to what we had come to find in Fouta, the home village of Omar ibn Said, where he had gone from to study for 25 years and where he returned and stayed for 6 years before the attack that led to his capture and enslavement. So our choice was based on 3 sets of evidence. One was linguistic, and second geographical, and then historian evidence. Next. On the linguistic level, the reading of the name of the village or region as Coppe, mentioned by Omar ibn Said in his 1819 letter, as being the place where he would like to return, has been confirmed by most of our consultants. And these are imams, Arabic scholars, so teachers. Next. And on the geographical level, Coppe is located on the Isle of Morphil, between the Senegal and the Diop rivers. And Omar mentioned in his autobiography that his village was located between the 2 rivers. There's no other village in the region that has the same name or a name that comes close to it. Also, a village named Kaba, which is another possible reading of the word, does not exist in this area. Next. As for the historical evidence, according to the villagers like people of Coppe, the scene described by Umar, which led to the massacre of several people and his capture, was frequent in this village. At least 2 tangible facts attest to this. The first one is that a woman was once kidnapped. She called the villagers for help, was rescued and freed by the villagers. She stayed in the village until she got married to someone in the village, and her great-grandchildren still live in the village today. The second fact is that there is a space in the village where human bones are found on the clay soil. It is probably an old cemetery or a place of massacre, like the one described by Omar in his autobiography. And another historical element is that this village is over 400 years old, while the capture of Omar dates 1807. This shows that the village predates the attack Omar is referring to and in his autobiography. Next. And at the bottom left of his text, this is the text I put on my slide, on each slide. You see at the bottom left of this text, Omar signed with his mother's name, Hani Eromak. And Hani is a common name in the village, and some women still bear that name today. The chief of the village's great-great-grandmother bore that name. Therefore, I asked him to trace his ancestry to see if he's somehow related to Omar. So he did not want to talk to me directly about that because, you know, when you are the chief of the village, you know, you don't want people to think that you are, you know, being biased, or you try to, you know, take advantage of anything, you know, in the village. So, but, you know, he sent me to another person, and I will mention that later on. On the question of restitution, in the United States, the question of restitution of Omar's work poses serious issues, at least according to the institutions that hold it, namely museums and libraries, and thus requires a different approach from that used in Europe. Let me just mention here that I am part of a research endeavor on the restitution of objects, and, you know, things that belong to Africa that were taken away by the Europeans. Indeed, respondents believe that the African Americans, especially Black Muslims, claim Umar as one of them and identify with him and his legacy. I think Muslim Wellness Foundation is a good example.
Yes.
This is what certainly explains the mosque in Fayetteville being named after Umar. There is also a foundation, Omar ibn Said Foundation in Fayetteville.
J'ai du mal vous comprendre. Essayez de me demander à nouveau.
So, this is where
Ok,
I
voilà
stand
la recording.
for now. So, now, new findings about Umar's genealogy. In a recent visit to Futa, I met with a woman named Aissatou Beidiba. She is the ex-wife of Coppe's current chief of the village. You remember I said that he did not want to be the one to speak about that. His name is Abdul Diaba, and he happens to be his cousin, so the cousin of his ex-wife. Aissatou lives a few kilometers away from Coppe in a village named Tuldegal. Aissatou's great-great-grandmother's name was Umu Hani Hamadi. Umu Hani Hamadi's husband's name was Seidu. Seidu is the local, version of Said. Said is more like Arabic, pure Arabic. So they say Seidu. Hello. His name was Seidu Kumba Mojel. So because I thought Mojel was the last name, I asked her about that word, and she said, no, this is just an attribute, and he's the good person. Umuhani had a daughter whose name was Adama Umuhani. Next. Adama Umuhani was the mother of Fatim Adama. You see, every time you have the name of the mother added to the person's name. Fatim Adama was the mother of Beidi Fatim. And Beidi Fatim is the father of Aissatou, Beidi Ba, our informant. Next. Why is this interesting? This is interesting because Umar was born in 1770. His sister, he mentioned that his mother had one daughter. So his sister, possibly Adama Umuhani, would have been born either before or after 1770. And in this region, you can, people can have children even late in their age. In 1807, Adama Umuhani may have had a daughter already, so Fatim Adama. Fatim Adama would have had a son later in her life, Beidi Fatim. And Beidi Fatim must have had a daughter later in life whose name is Aissatou Beidi, our informant. This is the genealogy of that woman, Aissatou, and how she was related to her great-great-mother, Umuhani Hamadi. Hamadi must be the name of the father of Umuhani. Okay. So Umar's father's name was Seidu, as I said. And Umar told us that in his autobiography that his Quranic master was named Sheikh Suleiman Kumba. So Seidu Kumba was his father. Now he mentioned that name. Seidu Kumba, the name, the middle name Kumba came from Aisatuba, not Umar. Umar did say that I'm Omar ibn Said, Omar Saidu. In Futa, people would say Omar Saidu. So, but Aisatu said that Umar's father's name was Saidu Kumba. So, and Umar told us that his Quranic master's name was Sheikh Suleiman Kumba. So, what relationship could have there be between Saidu Kumba and Suleiman Kumba? That's something that I want to know about. Were they brothers? Because they may have had the same mother, Kumba, as you see. So what is next? In my next trip to Futa, I would like to document each person in this genealogy. I want to know who, every person mentioned here was, especially beginning with Beidi Fatim, because Beidi Fatim is the father of Aisatuba, and then going back to Fatim Adama. So who was Fatim? And maybe trying to go further down to know more about Adama Umuhani and so. I also would like to identify other living members of the family and have a conversation with them, not only Aisatu, but other people. And in my recent trip, I had a chance to visit a neighborhood in a place called Cascas, because my informant this time was from Cascas. So since I'm working on a larger project to kind of document the history of Futa during the time of Umar and his capture, so I wanted to visit some, important cities, especially where people used to go to study Quran and, Islamic sciences, as Umar mentioned it. He said he studied for 25 years. So I want to understand what it meant at that time to study for 25 years. Where would people go and with whom they would study? So as I was going to the place where one of the leaders of the Toro Revolution movement, was born, so we went to Cascas, which is on the way. And Cascas, as I said, is the hometown of one of my informants. And there is a neighborhood in Cascas inhabited by a Kebe family. It says when you in big cities or villages, every people refer to families as like, oh, I'm going to visit the Secks, the Diop's, the Fars, etc., etc. So the Kebes, it used to be a house, but later on, when people grow up and have children, so it extends up. But it's a neighborhood. It's not a village. It's in Cascas. So because Kebe was a possible reading of the word Coppe, that's why in Barobe Jakel, the Kebe family in Barobe Jakel, they claim Umar to be their ancestors. So I said, I want to go back to Cascas and talk to that family to kind of know more about their history. And then next, on the question of restitution, unlike the objects stolen from Africa and transported to Europe, Umar's manuscripts were produced in the United States and therefore they belong there. However, we believe that the broken or misunderstood link between the African American community and the motherland, Africa, could be reestablished through Umar, whose message was very clear. He expressed his wish to return to a place in Africa called Coppe. I think if you ask your president, Camilla, how she felt when she went to Futa, I think it's a she has a lot to share with you. To conclude, I would say that this research aims to find the origins of Omar ibn Said in Futa Toro, his native land, based on facts drawn from his autobiography of 1831. His other writings, composed mainly of letters, and the oral history from the people of Futa. The research had taken us so far to the village of Coppe, which comes closest to Omar's description of his home village and the conditions of his captivity. Other findings may lead us to a different place, who knows? The methodology in use to conduct this research endeavor consists of handing over the writings of Omar to the scholars of Futa who can read Ajami Arabic and are steeped in the culture and history of their land. In addition, we address the issue of sharing Omar's legacy, including his written history and his correspondences with Africans, most specifically the Futa. Indeed, since the discovery of his autobiography and other texts, Futa claims that legacy and appropriates it. Actually, since I started to go back, to Coppe, so I realized how interested the young men and women there are in Omar and his legacy. So I advocate the sharing of this treasure with the people of Senegal in general, and Futa in particular. Next. So I would like to thank all of you for your patience, and I'm ready to answer your questions. Thank you.
So thank you for providing kind of the overview of your research. And I'm always struck by the fact that with those sort of three significant factors, the linguistic evidence, the historical evidence, the geographical evidence, you've been able to, through this kind of three-pronged approach, substantiate, right, and also clarify some of the ways that Omar's autobiography has been interpreted by current scholars and scholars of the past. And so while you sort of present it, right, this methodology in a very straightforward way, I'm always left wondering, why is it that, almost 200 years after the publication, right, the 1831 autobiography, it took so many, many decades for someone to say, why don't we ask the people of the region? So I want to, I guess my question is, what do you think or believe allowed you to pursue a line of inquiry that almost seems like obvious, right? Now, obvious now. But 5-6 years ago, no, right? No one was asking, let's take Omar's autobiography to the Futanke people. Let's take his autobiography to Futa Toro and just ask them to read it. So what led you to want to pursue this line of inquiry using those three sort of that three-pronged approach, linguistic, historical, and geographical?
Thank you. That's a great question. So first, I will start with my own background. So as a linguist, I always deal with texts and, oral productions. Actually, my dissertation was on the structure of Sufi oral narratives in Wolof.
Okay.
And how that structure influenced the way that we worship, the way we worship here in Senegal. So the place was the place of narratives, Sufi oral narratives in the worship, here in Senegal. So, and that's how I I ended up knowing that actually this is really the way that people communicate by showing examples of sheikhs, or showing how miracles, miracle stories, shaped the consideration that people have, vis-a-vis their sheikhs. So, so to respond to your question, I had the intuition that, we had this chance to have a text because, this is not the only slave narrative that you have, but you have many slave narratives, but that are written in English. So you may think, okay, so some parts of the story may not be there. So, or this is somebody's interpretation. But Umar, he used, his own background of Ular and also Arabic to write his, his life, as some people say. Second, when I started to get interested in Umar's, story, I heard a lot of things about his conversion into Christianity. And knowing that Futa was the gateway of Islam in Senegal, and not only Senegal, in West Africa.
Yeah.
I can even say North Africa, because the Almoravid movement that started here in the 11th century. So it went also, to spread Islam to the north of Africa, from Tekrur, which is the origin of Senegal in the 11th century. So our contact with Islam is, dated very, long time ago. So, and he said he studied for 25 years. That means he must have been a Quranic teacher himself, because today, if somebody in that area studies for 25 years, he must become a Quranic teacher. So my question was, how can this person be, how can this person convert into another religion and abandon his faith in Islam? That was really a concern. So I said, okay, let me then show it to people. And prior to that, I visited Futa when I was working for the museum, the Black Civilizations Museum in Dakar that was opening at that time. I had a chance to visit Futa and, to be in contact with scholars there. I said, let me go back. That's what facilitated this trip, because I already had some, knowledge of the region. I said, let me go to show this text to some scholars of Futa. And I have to say that the first person we've met who read the text, he said two things. After reading the text, he said, Umar was a true Muslim.
Oh, mashallah.
That's what he said. And he's an imam. And he said, he read the word, the 1819 letter, and he read the word, the kaf and that bar. He read it as Coppe, and he said, go to Coppe Mangay and ask them. So, and we challenged him. We said, so this passage where Umar said, before I was worshiping, when I was a Muslim or a follower of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I was praying this way, but now I pray this way. What does it mean to you? He said, no, he's not. He was a slave first. He lived with a Christian family who tried to get him interested in their worship and their beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
So even if he joined them to pray, this doesn't mean that he was a Muslim, because nobody have access to one's faith, one's heart.
That's right.
But also, he said, Islam recognizes other religions,
Mm-hmm.
the people of books, meaning the Christians, the Jews.
Right.
He said Islam was like the synthesis of all those religions.
Mm-hmm.
So, and as a Muslim, Umar can just, take, the people he was living with just as believers of other religions, but not enemies.
Right.
So, and that's how in this area where we are, like the Sufi area, the Sufi culture is tolerant. So Senegal, as an example, let me give you an example. Our first president was Christian. He ran the country for 20 years. He was Christian. His wife was Christian. But he was a good friend of the Sheikhs from the main...
Je ne trouve pas le Cheikh from dans votre musique.
Sorry, my laptop. So he was very close to the leader of the Murid, community, the Muridiya community, which is a Sufi group, the Tijanis, etc., etc.
Mm-hmm.
And that did not change the faith of those communities.
Right.
They remained true Muslims. Actually, he even used to go to the mosque on Eid day. Yes.
Okay.
He would sit there and watch the prayer.
Mm.
So coming from this kind of culture, it is understandable for someone like Umar to be open, to people of different, faith.
Okay.
So that's what the Imam said, and so those are, I think, the two elements. One is my background as a discourse analyst. And second, I think people did not, maybe they focused too much on this controversy around Umar's, conversion or not conversion. You see that, and that's why I left that debate with those who are interested in, and I decided to look at Umar from an insider's point of view. So try to understand where he came from, what that culture has to show to the rest of the world. I think if I missed something, I think I answered your question.
Yes. No, I think that so while you sort of wove together, right, the linguistic, the historical, the geographical, and now it seems like even the genealogical evidence. So now it appears as if there is actually 5 factors, right? Linguistic, historical, geographical, genealogical. And I would also add one that is sort of personal to who you are, right? And so in your interpretation of the text is some knowledge of the context, right? And your first question is, how could we even debate whether or not this person from this place would convert to Christianity, right? It just, for
It
you,
doesn't make sense to any Futanke. No.
right, right. And so immediately it seems like that's a theory, but based on the context and the place that you know, it would seem to be a very weak theory or hypothesis about his life.
Yes.
I'm curious to know, because your inquiry seems to be such a dramatic departure from, I think, the way that certainly his autobiography is approached by current scholars. Um, how have you found sort of the reception to this new additional information, these hypotheses, sort of in the world of sort of Said scholars or just sort of African studies scholars in general? What is the reception like to, because I get very excited, right, about the idea, because I'm a family therapist, right? I look at sort of psychosocial histories of families, being able to now trace perhaps his living descendants, right, adds, I think, an element to the story that makes it literally like come alive, right? We're not just talking about an historical figure, but someone who has living descendants, right? Even if those descendants are of his sister. So what is the reception like when this, I think it would seem, kind of shakes up some of the more established knowledge or hypothesis about his life?
I mean, I have to confess that I tried to be in a conversation with those scholars on my research. And it's been very difficult to have that conversation.
Okay.
I don't know why. I don't know why. You know, I don't want to get into personal, considerations, but I mean, I've been to Carolina several times. I've been to, other places, but and I tried also to be part of that conversation, but somehow people seem to be kind of, I don't know, skeptical or suspicious or, distant, vis-a-vis this new avenue that I am trying to open on the scholarship. Maybe it's because they are interested in the institute debate on Ummah, like whether they, around the conversion, and trying also to kind of show the width of his knowledge of the Quran and the Hadith. That's what I've seen in the literature on Umar recently. So maybe finding Umar's origins is not maybe something that they are interested in. It could be. So, but I'm also not interested in this debate around the faith, faith issues, because I can't have access to that. I can only speculate.
Right.
And I think maybe people have a lot more to know about Umar, which can come from his homeland.
Yes.
So,
So let me ask
and
a question
maybe that can even help, as I said earlier, knowing about those things.
Yes.
Help understand better who Omar was and why he said things, in certain ways.
Right.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, maybe I can ask the question in different ways. What do you foresee might be some of the implications, right, for where this research is leading you? I mean, certainly my experience of traveling to Coppe and to Futa, there's something just undeniable, right, about the place when you're there. And I found myself, and I've certainly heard this in your writing and you're speaking about engaging with the people, is that you want to sort of remain a very objective researcher, right? And
Yes.
you have sort of
Yes.
methodology and and so you want it to be, credible, serious, legitimate, right? Research, you've gathered
Yes.
evidence. And then I think there is possibly this sort of spiritual component, right?
Yes.
Which when you're there, there's something that says this is the place, right?
Of course, I mean, and as I said, people also they have done their research, their search.
Yes.
I mean, locally, I know people who believed, that Omar was from this place, whether they think it rationally or, spiritually but I have lots of testimonies, coming from people. And maybe I have to clarify one thing. From in the European side, my work was well received. And that's why I was able to publish in a prestigious academic journal, Cahiers d'études africaines, my work on Omar ibn Said.
Okay.
So that is something, and this is like a purely reviewed. I think there are a lot of people read it. I received like evaluations from different people. So that is good because the debate on Omar is not limited to America. So we have so many people that are interested. Even in Senegal, we have, a couple of people who are interested in it, who have written about it. So, and that's so. When I said, if in Europe, actually, they are inviting me to a panel in Paris that is coming up. I know the time is short, but they're inviting me to be part of a panel to present my work. Where they will present the book, because we just published the book in which I have this article on Umar. So yes, I think it was well received in Europe in general. So I don't know if I missed something. You wanted me to add something. Can you recall?
Not to add something. I think because from your research, you've been so diligent about gathering not just sort of one source of evidence.
Oh yeah.
Multiple,
Now I got you. Yes.
Multiple.
I mentioned Barobe Jakel because there is a Mauritanian scholar whose name is Adam Nyokan, who published an article at IFA in my institute in Senegal to situate the origins of Omar in Barobe Jakel. And the reason why I went there, we went to Barobe, we met with the Kebe family, came with kind of very contradictory stories about Omar.
Okay.
One was that Omar was somebody who committed a crime in his village, was expelled from that village. He went to live in the bush, and that's where he was captured and shipped off. Another version said Omar was a spy. He was sent as a spy to Cayor by Abdel Khader Khan. And when he came back with another person, they did not tell the truth to Abdel Khader Khan. That's why Abdel Khader Khan he lost his battle against the Cayor and was captured and, jailed and everything in Cayor before he got freed and came back to Futa. So, contradictory version. And this is not what Umar said. That is also a fact.
Right.
You cannot just make up stories about someone who said
exactly
this is how I was captured. To me, you need to go by his text until we find something else.
Right. Right.
So, and the reason why I went to Cascas is also because I overheard somebody sending Umar to that place. I said, let me go to Cascas. And when I went to Cascas, I asked my host, I told him about the story. He said, there's a family, a Kebe family here, but it's a family. Even though they have multiple, people live in concessions here. You have, like that. But it's not a village by itself. It's also by the river.
Okay.
So I went to locate the place, identified, but I didn't have time to stay with them and talk. But I asked a few people how old, this neighborhood was and that kind of thing. But I cannot share, firm, findings on this. This is the next step. So on my next trip to Futa, I will go. But so just to say that I want to be as objective as possible for this research, because I mean, we know that Omar is from Futa. Futa is very large. So whatever place we find to be, the closest to what he described, to me, it's a benefit.
Yes.
There's no need to fight over, who's gonna, discover that place first. No, I've been on the way for like 3-4 years now. I think I made some progress, I think.
Yes. You have made
And those who want to challenge it, they just have to do the same, to do the same thing, to come and do what I did, and maybe they can have better findings.
Yes. Well, I think, alhamdulillah, at least what I am left and sort of struck by, is that part of the reason, my first question was, why hadn't anybody else sort of taken these documents to the village? But, I guess the believer in me says that there's also a time and a place. And so, perhaps this is the time and you are the person to facilitate the conversation, and also I think to become the catalyst for really what becomes a broader conversation, right? About what the Futanke understand about what happened to the people when they came to, or when they left, right? They could have gone to Brazil, they could have gone to the Caribbean, to South America. I mean, the largest population of African descendant people outside of Africa is in Brazil. So, I think this way to reestablish a connection that was lost.
Yes.
And Omar's writing provides a tool for people to begin to understand, right? He allows us to put a face and a name and a story to millions of stories that were not documented.
Yes.
And now, I think the gift that he offers us is not simply to find his origin, but it enables us to say, what we thought was lost, right, is maybe sort of lost during a particular time, but we can sort of reestablish, right, and kind of repair what has been forgotten, what has been left behind, what has been taken, and all of that, in the sort of the scheme of time in the universe, 200 years is like a blink of an eye.
Yes.
So I remain excited about this research, about what it means for both sides of the Atlantic. This is not just sort of a pursuit for Black Muslims or African American Muslims, but it certainly, I think all of these clues along the way allow us to think about, what does it now mean for us to have conversations together, and to talk about who we are, right? Who we have become since that time of Omar's birth and his capture. So thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to hearing more about your panel in Paris, and additional discoveries, in particular, the genealogical evidence that this offers us to further substantiate, right, the theories that you have developed about Omar's life. So thank you so much.
Yeah. So there's no other question from the
I don't see any
attendees?
questions. I'm going to post the recording and additional information about, you know, the phases of research that you have explored since 2021. It's been, you know, you've gone deeper into the work since you traveled with Jennifer and Gavin. And thankfully, alhamdulillah, the work has really unfolded in a incredibly beautiful way.
Thank you. It was my pleasure being with you, and I look forward to more collaboration with your foundation. And again, I'm very grateful to you all for you've been by my side to help with logistics, with transportation, you know, with your knowledge also of the African American culture and the Muslim, you know, community in the United States. So you made my life really easy, you know, and my work, you know, accomplishable just because, you know, you've been there every time to kind of support me on this. And you did it also objectively. I think you know, so, and that's, I think that's what the academic world is about. I think we just need to challenge ourselves to kind of push ourselves forward and, you know, go deeper and, you know, go to the field. I mean, you cannot just stay in an office and, you know, talk about things you did not experience yourself. So I did not want to be that kind of scholar. So I want to be on the ground, you know, talking with the real people and, you know, ask them. Sometimes I even feel like not very comfortable coming back again to ask the same question, to verify, to challenge people. So, and I did it recently on this trip. I went back after like 3 years. I went back to Dimat to see Imam Ahmed Bedi, and he said the same thing.
Yes.
You know, and it was he's one of the important figures of his village. So he gathered a lot of people at night. So to talk about this research, and so, and his statements remain the same. So which makes me, you know, feel more comfortable. So thank you so very much for the time, and I look forward to working even more with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a good rest of your day. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.